Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to this EDQM webinar. My name is Vuk Vukovic, and I'm a quality assessor in the SEP procedure. I work at EDQM Certification of Substances Department. I will be presenting today some, let's say, tips and advice how to build successful SEP revision application. So let's start. This is the content of my presentation. First, I will give some key information about maintaining the life cycle of the SEP dossier correctly. Then I will show some illustrative and practical examples how to build up this successful dossier for revisions, which these examples are not intended to replace the guidelines. They are only here to bring some clarifications on how to organize the information submitted in the dossier more efficiently. Then probably the part that will be very interesting to the most of you is switch to the SEP 2.0 format of the certificate and how to do it. And then at the end, some short take-home messages. So let's start with revisions and renewals of SEP certificates, an overview. So when the SEP is issued for the first time, this certificate covers the process that is described in the dossier. If any changes are made to the process or the process controls, this has to be submitted to EDQM, and this has to be assessed by EDQM assessors. The dossier has to be kept up to the date. However, not only EDQM has to be notified about these changes, but the customers too. And there is this specific EDQM document that describes SEP holders' responsibilities toward their customers, which you can find if you follow this link on our website. So once the initial SEP is granted, it is valid for 5 years after the issuing date. And then there is a renewal procedure after which the SEP is basically unlimited, provided that the dossier is always kept up to date. So why we would wish to revise a SEP certificate? If we want to be, and we should be, in line with the most recent legal requirements, one of the, let's say, most obvious examples is nitrosamines, control of nitrosamines, which emerged a few years ago. Then if you have certain changes in the process and in the process controls that you wish to have them approved, you have to apply for revision of your certificate, or you have certain administrative changes which also have to be declared. So all revisions are actually done in line with these several guidelines that can be found on the EDQM website. Here I show only 3 main, let's say, documents, only key documents that are here to help you with revision submissions. And they are all based on the EU regulations on variations to marketing authorization guidelines. Also, there are EDQM policies and guidelines that can be found if you click on this link. However, not only here we have useful information, we also have frequently asked questions on our website, which can be consulted before submitting any change. And also, of course, the pharmacopoeia, European pharmacopoeia itself with its supplements, which is regularly being updated, which means that also your dossier has to be regularly updated in line with this updated requirements. There are also EMA guidelines, ICH guidelines. So how we should choose the correct type of revision when we are submitting revision to EDQM. There is this document which can be found on our website, which is key document to understand how to prepare for submitting a revision. but also it is useful even before any change of the process or control is made to be consulted. So this guideline lists type of changes, conditions to be fulfilled, and all the documentation that is required for submission of revisions. This guideline will also help you to choose the correct type of revision depending on what change you have in the process, and should be, of course, consulted before any submission and should be used as a help to prepare the relevant documentation. Please keep in mind that EDQM has rights to reject or reclassify certain revisions if needed. More on this about next on the next slides. So there are several types of changes that you can submit to EDQM. Obviously, administrative changes, changes in contact details, in names of the company, addresses, etc., provided that the location remains the same, etc. Then the second type of changes is quality changes, which would apply to chemical and double and herbal SEPs. Third class is changes related to the TSE risks. Then fourth type of change is use of SEP in application of another SEP. So for example, if you have an intermediate, which is covered by a European Pharmacopoeia certificate, and then you want to use this in the process for the final substance, you can use this SEP for the intermediate in application for your final substance. And fifth type of the change is transfer of holdership. EDQM guideline that I have mentioned for revisions and renewals is structured in a way that has first well, the number of the change, then the description of the change, conditions that this change has to fulfill, specific documentation that has to be submitted, and type of the change. So for type of the change, the changes are classified as immediate or annual notifications, minor and major changes, and any change that you cannot classify, that does not fit in any of the changes described in the guideline, you can submit to EDQM as minor change by default. When looking at this table, you can choose the correct case for your change, and also when looking at this column conditions 1, 2, so there will always be below this table like a second table with description of these conditions, and also the same principle for the documentation. Now, types of revisions. So what is difference change and revision? One revision can have one or more changes within it. There are same names for revisions and changes, so minor change, minor revision. So you should, but the meaning is different. So for minor change, you should refer to the guideline in order to classify correctly and choose the correct type of revision. So depending on the classification of changes, revisions are notifications, minor, major revisions, and sister file. So if you're submitting a notification, this type of revision can have immediate annual notifications or group notifications. For example, group notifications are useful for transfer of holdership, which affects several SEP dossiers. There is also frequently asked question section on our website about this. Minor revision should contain minor revisions, of course, but also can contain some notifications. Major revision should contain major changes, but also can contain some minor changes and also notifications. Sister file, however, is a type of revision which is, let's say, something between new dossier and the revision. It is specific type of revision where the company can apply for a new certificate which covers a process that is similar to the parent file, which is actually the file which has already been approved and SAP holder has it. There are different fees for different types of revisions. Also there are other type of revisions, like I already mentioned, transfer of holdership, renewal, which is specific revision 5 years after the SAP initially granted. I have already mentioned it. And also the last one, which is very important, is dossier update following a revision of the pharmacopoeia monograph for a specific substance. So this type of revision can be submitted as part of minor or major revisions. If you have minor or major changes in the process or renewal, or if you don't have minor and major changes in your process, you can also submit this type of revision separately, in which case it is free of charge. There are no fees to be paid. Classification of changes. So there are in principle two types of changes, like do and tell and do. So notifications are most of the time do and tell. Some administrative changes without any impact on the quality of the final substance, and you should only confirm in your application that all the conditions listed in the guideline for revisions are met. This is do and tell principle. However, on the other side, we have this tell and do, where we have minor and major revisions. It is very important to think when considering whether a revision is minor or major, how the final substance quality is impacted or may be impacted even before batches are produced and the batch data are obtained and the batches are liberated, right? So minor changes listed in the guideline. There are also minor changes by default if you cannot find some change in the guideline. On the other hand, for major change, if there is a potential impact on the quality of the final substance, this should be submitted as a major change. And in some cases, even if there is potential impact on the quality of the final substance, major change is not enough. You should go for a sister procedure. Also, if you are in doubt what change you should submit for, whether you should go for minor, major, sister file, there are technical advice meetings. There is a possibility of such meetings with EDQM assessors, and you can also apply for this, and there will be a fee to be paid if necessary, if the company wishes. Okay, so here I gave some examples of type of revisions and associated types of changes. So if you have, for example, you're adding an intermediate manufacturer or tightening specification. Sorry, if you're changing the name of an approved intermediate manufacturer, or changing some, tightening specification limits for intermediate starting material, or other minor editorial changes in analytical procedure for the final substance, this would be a notification. Minor revisions, however, also several examples just extracted from our guideline. So if there are addition of new starting material manufacturers, no impact on the final substance specification. Also the same for the intermediate manufacturers. Revised discussion on impurities, for example, nitrosamines, it will be minor change by default. Addition, extension of retest period is a typical minor change. Major revision, for example, introduction of a new solvent in the penultimate step of the process, when this solvent has been demonstrated absent in the final substance. So this means that the impact on the final substance quality may be there, but you showed that it's not there, that the quality is equivalent. Sister file, however, the same thing, just in the last step of the process. And of course, if you're completely changing the route of synthesis, but the substance remains the same, then you can apply for a sister file. The EDQM always notifies the applicants at the end of the evaluation of their requests. And there are two outcomes that are possible at the end of the SEP revision. It is either you get a revised certificate, either you get an approval letter from the EDQM stating that your SEP remains valid. So what to do with the revised SEP? This is a mandatory step for a SEP holder to inform all the customers, and then the marketing authorization holder will update the application if via certain variations if necessary. What to do when a change is approved but the SEP is not revised? So the SEP holder should inform the customers, but marketing authorization holder does not have to submit a variation. You can also check what is happening with all SEPs on our website, which has a certification database where you can see which SEP is valid, which SEP is withdrawn, so not valid anymore. All this is publicly available information. And also I must stress here one important thing, which is to the company SEP holders should keep contact details up to date, names of the contact persons and email addresses, because all communication with EDQM is now electronic. And also SEPs and approval letters are also only electronic now. They are not sent by post anymore. So if you wish to receive your certificate, you have to inform EDQM about any change in contact details and email also contact details. And also a reminder about this guideline. EDQM actually is a policy document. Reminder of what SEP holder responsibilities toward their customers are. How to apply for revisions? So you are basically updating the content of the CTD, of the dossier, module 1, module 2, module 3. Module 1 with cover letter explaining the changes you're introducing in the process. Application form, which will have to be completely filled in with manufacturing sites details, etc. Comparative table, which is a key document for evaluation of revisions, which is actually the Annex 7 of the application form. Updated declarations if necessary. Module 2, if it is impacted, can be updated. And of course, Module 3, all impacted sections should be submitted. However, if there are sections that are not impacted by the changes, you don't have to resubmit the same content again. So for example, if you're adding a retest period on your certificate, and this is the only change that you declared within a minor revision, you don't have to update any other section of the dossier apart from 3 to S7. Right, and of course you should use there is a EDQM guideline for revisions to help you to guide you to prepare the documentation. Application form, you should select the correct type of revision, so notification, minor, major. Renewal can be without or with changes, grouped revisions, etc. So it is the SEP holder's responsibility to carefully choose the type of revision and to take into account all the changes declared. I should also stress here one very important thing, which is if there is a change introduced somewhere in the dossier, but this change is not declared in the comparative table, EDQM will not consider this change at all. EDQM will not assess this change, and it will not consider this change as approved. So all changes must be individually classified and declared in the comparative table, which is Annex 7 of the application form. If a change has been made in the dossier but not declared in this table, it's not assessed, not approved, although it is part of the dossier, we will not consider this as approved. Comparative table should be organized in a very concise and clear manner. All the differences between the approved text of the dossier and the proposed one should be clearly highlighted. And of course, all the changes should be classified correctly. The justification of the changes, short justification should be given in the comparative table. However, any further justification and development of this justification should be in the cover letter. This is just the structure of the comparative table, and we will see more in the next slide. So this is, let's say, how a comparative table, example of a fairly good comparative table. So when assessor looks at this comparative table, immediately I see what's changed. So there are changes in quantities of some reagents, solvents, temperatures, etc. However, for example, I can even criticize this comparative table and say that, okay, there is a solvent change, toluene to methanol, but this is not highlighted. So this will probably be a bit more difficult to spot. I will spot it, but in order to facilitate the EDQM assessor, you can also highlight this. And then you can write this reference to some other parts of the dossier if we need to have a look at in details in some other data. Not only module 1, you can also tell here that okay, there is a change, also justification of a change in section, for example, for impurities 32S32, etc. The last column of the table, as I said, justification of the change, which is very important, and it should be developed appropriately. And also the classification of the change, so the number of the change from the EDQM guideline. This document is available on our website. This document will be revised soon. However, it describes timelines for each type of revisions. So between approximately 1 to 3 months after we receive the package of the information for revision from SEP holders, EDQM has 1 to 3 months to evaluate it, depending on the type of revision. If estimated necessary, EDQM might ask additional questions and then give the applicant 1 month to submit the response, and then the EDQM will have 1 month to evaluate the response. So at the end, the outcome of the evaluation is either SEP is revised, either if the information on the SEP needs to be revised, or you get, or the SEP holder gets a letter stating that the SEP remains valid. What happens if information provided in the dossier is insufficient or not fully appropriate? So, for example, some of the documents or analyses required by our guideline are not submitted or not performed or not appropriately addressed. Well, the assessors will have to ask additional questions. This, for every round, you should count at least 2 months of prolongation, so 1 month for the company to prepare and submit the response, and then 1 month for EDQM to evaluate. So this means that the revision timeline is prolonged, the certificate is issued later. So there is, as I said already, specific type of revision. What happens when there are updates in the texts of the pharmacopoeia monograph for a specific substance? So it is SEP holder responsibility to keep updated the dossier and process controls, anything required by the revised pharmacopoeia monograph, and also to ensure compliance with every current version of the monograph. So the EDQM decides whether these updates are case A or case B, and also EDQM informs the SEP holder by these updates of the pharmacopoeia monographs via emails, which is another reason why it is important to have the contact details up to date. So case A is something, let's say, not urgent. You can submit this update of the dossier within next request for revision that you have planned. However, case B is something, let's say, more urgent, and you are given 3 months to update your dossier in line with the updated pharmacopoeia monograph and to submit this updated dossier to EDQM. And then the EDQM has 3 months to evaluate this. So another type of revision is notifications, where normally only confirmation that all the conditions are listed in our guideline are met is enough. So again, this is just a reminder how this application for notification is prepared and organized. So for example, change in test procedure, for starting material, for example, these 3 conditions have to be fulfilled, and you should provide us this documentation. This is annual notification, so within a year of implementation of this change, you should inform EDQM. These are some examples of the typical notifications. I will not go in detail in them. It is just to illustrate, to give you some feeling of these notifications. In any case, all this is indeed very detailed in our guideline for revisions. So yes, difference. I can only highlight some immediate notifications. For example, change in the name of manufacturers, SEP holder, addresses of manufacturing sites when the physical location remains the same, or change in the composition of the immediate packaging, etc. Speaking about minor and major revisions, so confirmation that the conditions listed in the document are fulfilled is not enough. For minor and major revisions, you should submit appropriate justifications and which should be developed. So why the change is proposed, plus supporting analysis, whether it is theoretical, risk analysis based on some experimental studies or not. And this justification has to briefly be mentioned in the comparative table and in detail, excuse me, in the supportive documentation in module 1, for example, or in module 3. So, for example, some examples of justifications. Previous manufacturer stopped production. Now we are introducing new manufacturer of, I don't know, starting material or intermediate, for example, or for business reasons or whatever other reason is. And then you also, within this justification, should write what are the quality risks that are assessed according to what guidelines, what studies have been performed, etc. How the submitted information should be organized. So all this supporting documentation should be, let's say, proportionate to the risk. If you are introducing a change in the dossier, which is, for example, you wish to add a micronized grade of the substance, is there a need to submit lots of pages, like dozens of pages, explaining and justifying this need? I wouldn't say so. Because there is no really risk for the quality of the final substance. So you don't have to develop this, and you don't have to repeat this information in many places of the dossier where this information perhaps would not even be required. And I will repeat that only parts of the CTD dossier which have changed have to be submitted. So for example, if you're updating risk assessment for nitrosamines and there is no other sections impacted, then it is enough to submit section 32S32. You don't have to resubmit the whole dossier just for the change in one dossier, because then this facilitates the review of the dossier to the assessors. These are some practical examples what to do. For example, you're introducing recovery of solvents. So you should update section 32S22, exact points of the recovery, where the solvent is took from recovery, where it is introduced in the process. It should be indicated in the process flow chart. The description of the procedures should be given. Then in section 32S23, we should have also the specification of recovered solvents, or let's say a statement if they are the same as for the fresh solvents, or etc. Then for reprocessing of materials, clear triggers for reprocessing should be defined, and reprocessing procedures have to be described. Please bear in mind that the reworking is not allowed. If you need to perform some spike and purge studies, then you should show us the clear link between the batch that you spiked and then what intermediate batches you obtained from this batch, and then what final substance batches are obtained from these batches, and whether this is what is the scale of these studies. For starting materials, also as described in our guidelines, so the routes of synthesis, manufacturers, full addresses, discussion about impurities carried over, any changes in the specification have to be appropriately justified. Also, speaking of manufacturers, we are interested in manufacturers, so we do not care about suppliers, and this information does not have to be provided in the, to the EDQM. Only those manufacturers who, well, make the substance, we need information about this. If you wish to introduce a risk management summary for elemental impurities, please don't forget to state the route of administration. And if you use the wording absent in the RMS, then you should also give a definition of absent. Also, if you are submitting an RMS, please note that EDQM will automatically append it to the certificate. However, if you are submitting the RMS, but you do not want it to be appended to the certificate, you have to clearly state this somewhere in the cover letter, or for example, in Annex 7 or comparative table. These are some examples of minor changes, and I will just highlight two minor changes by default, which are not found in our guideline, at least not for the moment, which is addition of risk assessment for nitrosamines and also switch to SEP 2.0 format. I will speak about this more later. Examples of major changes, for example, widening of in process or specification limits for intermediate, which may have a significant effect on the overall quality of the final substance, and some other changes as described here. What happens if a request for revision is not appropriately classified? Well, then the EDQM might reject the request for revision, and the company will have to submit the revision again according to advice from EDQM in this rejection letter. And in this case, the fees will have to be paid again for the new revision. This is not an ideal situation because while it's the assessment is prolonged, there are additional costs for the company, etc. Examples. So if we are a company and we want to submit, we have several annual notifications, immediate notifications, and the risk assessment for nitrosamines to be submitted or updated. What revision should we apply for? It's a minor revision because the highest rank of change is minor by default, which is risk assessment for nitrosamines. Another example, so I have to read a bit more perhaps from this slide in order not to miss anything. So we are a company, we are holding a SAP for certain substance, and we have optimized the process in the penultimate stage where we obtain the crude final substance. We noticed after this optimization that increased level of a certain impurity are obtained within the new process in the crude final substance, in the penultimate step. And this impurity was previously controlled as unknown at limit 0.15% in the crude final substance. So now with the optimized process, we decided to add a limit for this impurity, wider limit 0.20% in crude final substance. So the final substance specification in section 32S24 is suitably updated. But however, the limit for unknown impurities in crude final substance stays unchanged. We also decided to stress to EDQM that the same analytical procedure is used for analysis of impurities in the crude and in the final. And we also give information about analysis of the purge of this impurity. We find that within the new process, this impurity is below 0.10% in final substance, which means it can be controlled as unspecified. So we, after analysis of all this, we think that we should submit a major revision. This is acceptable. Another example, we wish to add an alternative intermediate manufacturer which uses a different route of synthesis for this intermediate. Different route of synthesis means different reagents, solvents, perhaps even starting materials, perhaps different early intermediates. We are applying for a major revision. However, in this case, this will have to be rejected because if we wish to add an alternative intermediate manufacturer with a substantially different process, this should be a sister file and not a major revision. Major revision is only if we wish to replace the process. Also, this is example for what happens, for example, if we are introducing a new solvent somewhere in the process, which is not the last step. So there is a potential impact on the final substance quality. Now we analyze the level of this solvent in final substance. Is there changes on the SEP? Will this introduce any changes on the SEP? Will this impact the final substance specification? If not, we can go for a major revision. If yes, however, it should be a sister file. However, also if this change is implemented in the last step, it is very clear that this should be a sister file. Excuse me. Speaking about sister files, in certain cases, it may not be possible, as I said, to apply for a revision. Then we go for a sister file. There is a specific guideline for sister file applications. There are certain conditions to be respected. Although you apply here for a new certificate, which is a sister certificate, sister file, there should be a comparative table submitted, which should highlight the differences between the existing SAP, existing process, which is called the parent file, and the new application proposed, the modified process from the sister file procedure. And the whole complete dossier should be submitted. There should not be, for example, submitted like this section is the same as in the parent file. No, so the references to the parent file are of course welcome, but the sister file should have a new set of all information applicable to the sister file. A sister file procedure is applicable so for similar production processes, for chemical and herbal applications. Substance is the same, holder is the same or in the same group as for the parent file, and the differences should be highlighted in the comparative table and classified as revisions. All the differences compared to the parent. Some examples when a sister file application might be needed is needed. Addition of a new manufacturing site of the final substance that does not belong to the same group. If any change impacting the final substance quality in the last step is introduced, this is a sister file. A new solvent that is not demonstrated absent in the final substance, different starting materials, intermediates, different catalysts, reagents, all this is obviously a sister file. Although in case of the substantial different route of synthesis, although the quality of the final substance is the same or specifications are the same as for the parent file, the route of synthesis is not the same. Therefore, the application for sister file should be requested. Documentation, module 1, module 2, module 3. Whereas in module 1, there should be, this is all basically the same as for new dossier, throughout the whole dossier. Only in the module 1, we should also have this comparative table. Now, speaking about renewal procedure, so the initial SEP, as I have already mentioned, is valid for 5 years. And 6 months before the expiry date of this SEP, the EDQM should receive a request from SEP holders for renewal of the certificate. Renewal is a specific procedure where assessors are reviewing the dossier after the experience with the process has been gained in last 4 or 5 years. And this review focuses on the General Monograph 2034 and also on, for example, some recently updated emerged guidelines such as nitrosamines. Specific documentation for renewal procedure is updated declarations for each manufacturing site and recent batch data, which are obtained in less than 18 months. A renewal should not contain any major change. If you have a major change in the process that has to be declared, this should be declared either via a major revision, either well in advance to 6 months before the SEP is expired, or another perhaps a bit more elegant solution is to first finalize the renewal procedure and then to submit a request for a major change. And this slide also highlights this, what I have just said. Also, it is obligatory to have risk assessment for nitrosamines within renewal, if not previously submitted. And in some cases, also sections 4.1 and 4.2 updated in line with SEP 2.0 requirements. If the recent batch data are not available, a commitment should be provided to EDQM that the company will provide batch data to the EDQM once they became available. So how to apply for revisions? to this specific type of revision, to the renewal application. In the application form, you should select whether it is renewal without changes or with changes, which means that you can submit certain changes with the renewal if you wish, or not. In this case, it would be renewal without. I will now move to some examples of revisions, some concrete examples of revisions. For example, we are a company, we are holding a set, and we wish to add a new starting material manufacturer in addition to the already approved one. And the new manufacturer uses a different synthetic route, which in this example, for example, can be a trigger for application of the ICH M7. We, company, have assessed the potential impact taking into account M7, Q3D, and we performed the update to risk assessment for nitrosamides. Then the first thing which we should also think is whether this change in synthetic route impacts the starting material specification. And then the second thing, whether this impact on the specification further impacts control strategy of impurities in the process, how this then influences the quality of the final substance. If there is no impact on the intermediates and final substance quality, this can be a minor revision. However, if there is impact on intermediates but not on the final substance, this can be major or a sister file. For example, if also there is impact on the final substance quality, then it should be a sister file. Why a sister file? Why not a major? Because we are adding a new manufacturer. We are not replacing the manufacturer. Okay, so now this slide about further potentially mutagenic impurities. We have a SAP and we have a limit for a potentially mutagenic impurity in the final substance, and we wish to change this to option 4. We offer a justification to EDQM that we have demonstrated that the impurity levels in the final substance are below 30% of TTC. This is not acceptable. ICH M7 does not associate option 4 with 30% of TTC. ICH M7 states that in order to justify option 4 control strategy, we have to understand the process parameter that impact the purge of the impurity, the residual levels of the impurity, and if no fate of the impurity, there is a typo on the slide. So if the no fate of the impurity has been discussed, no purge experiments have been performed, this is not acceptable. Also, from last year, we have ICH M7 question and answer document, which give clear clarification in its instructions related to option 4 control strategy. For option 4, critical levels are 1% and 10% of the TTC, depending if theoretical calculations of purge factors or experimental studies. And I will also highlight here that if any theoretical purge factor calculations are used to support the discussions, these also have to be supported with all relevant solubility data, boiling point if applicable data, any other relevant physicochemical characteristics with reference where these data have been taken from, how the risk ranking was performed, how the levels of risk was attributed, and how the final purge ratios were calculated. This is all very important to understand how the purge factor analysis. And also every assessment for option 4 approach is case-by-case assessment. Next example, we are replacing the approved process for an intermediate with a new process which results, however, in increased level of a potentially mutagenic impurity in final substance. So we are updating the final substance specification. We introduce a limit for this impurity, and we apply for major change. This is not acceptable because although the approved process is replaced with a new one, the quality of final substance is impacted, so this should be a final sister file application. The same approach should be followed for a non-mutagenic. Example for spike and purge studies. For example, for a sister file application where there is ICHM7 option 3 control strategy in starting material TTC 20 ppm. Spike study is done, 0.04% of the impurity spiked with the starting material. And then we demonstrated that the levels of the impurities are below TTC in final substance. This is, of course, not acceptable because first point, the spiked levels of the impurity in starting material are below the proposed limit. So in order to have valid spike studies, you should have the spiked level at the proposed specification limit or higher. And then, of course, just showing that the levels of the substance are below, the levels of the impurity, sorry, are below TTC in final substance is not enough. You should demonstrate that it is below 30% of TTC. For nitrosamines, there is specific guideline, which I will not comment now. However, I will just stress that this any change to this risk assessment to nitrosamines is a minor change by default. And now the part of the presentation that probably most of you were impatiently waiting. What to do if we want to switch to SEP 2.0 format of the certificate, which is a more user-friendly and more transparent format of the certificate, which EDQM introduced last year. So it should be noted that switch to this type of format of the certificate is not automatic. So switch to SEP 2.0 format has to be requested by SEP holders, and the correct type of revision is minor revision, at least because this change is minor revision by default. If you wish to have your certificate in SEP 2.0 format, you have to explicitly request it in both cover letter and in the comparative table. This slide highlights only key differences between old SEPs, hybrid SEPs, SEP 2.0. If you want to see all differences, I invite you to go to the dedicated page for SEP 2.0 on our website. Here I can comment only on few differences. For example, there is a SEP number which starts with R for old SEPs and which also don't has spore identification numbers, which are present in hybrid and SEP 2.0. Quality of water used in the last SEP is indicated if water is, of course, used in the last steps in SEP 2.0, which is not the case for old and hybrid SEP. And specification of the final substance is annexed to SEP 2.0, which is not the case for the other two types of the SEP certificate. What happens with these changes to SEP 2.0 format? If we are a company, we currently have an old or hybrid SEP, and the changes that are submitted will lead to revision of the SEP. There are two possibilities. We can explicitly request switch to SEP 2.0, or if we don't request it, we will get SEP in a revised SEP in a hybrid format, which means that old SEP is revised into hybrid format automatically. However, if hybrid is also revised in hybrid automatically, However, only if you request the switch to SEP 2.0, we will switch old and hybrid to SEP 2.0. If you have SEP 2.0, this will be revised into SEP 2.0. You cannot have SEP 2.0 and then request switch to old or hybrid. This does not work. Once SEP 2.0, always SEP 2.0. Well, at least until perhaps some other change of the SEP format. But at least for now, once SEP 2.0, it stays SEP 2.0. What happens at renewal of SEPs? If we are a company, we currently have an old SEP. At renewal, automatically the SEP will be revised into SEP 2.0, and you will have to update sections 3.2s 4.1 and 4.2 in line with the SEP 2.0 requirements. If we are a company and we currently have a hybrid SEP, there are several possibilities. If the changes submitted within the request for renewal lead to revision of the SEP, if switch to SEP 2.0 format is requested by the company gets SEP 2.0. If not requested, the company gets a hybrid SEP. If there are no changes if the changes submitted within the request for renewal do not lead to revision of the SEP, then letter stating that the SEP remains valid is sent by EDQM. If we currently have a SEP 2.0 and it will be renewed, actually, and we submit a request for a renewal procedure, there are two outcomes, and this is different from what we had before. So if there are changes in the contents of the SEP that lead to revision of the SEP, the revised SEP will be in SEP 2.0 format. If there are no changes in the contents of the SEP, then the company will get the letter stating that the SEP remains valid. The content of the dossier guideline EDQM policy document is updated and reflects all requirements for SEP 2.0. And in next slides, I will be highlighting some of these requirements. Section 1.3 should contain MDD, intended route of administration, duration of treatment. Section 4.1, names of the quality attributes, acceptance criteria, and what is also new and now obligatory is references to the associated analytical procedures. Two wordings are possible: Pharmacopoeia current edition or in-house, and that's it. One of two has to be selected. Section analytical procedures will be divided in two subsections: alternative and additional to Pharmacopoeia procedures, and procedures from the Pharmacopoeia monograph do not have to be reproduced. Information about MDD, it should be borne in mind that counter ion and water have to be also taken into account when calculating the MDD. 4 options for route of administration and treatment duration should be presented in one of the following formats. Quality of water, 3 are possible wordings: potable, purified, or for injections, and they have to be in line with referenced guidelines and monographs that I give in the slide. And following formulations below are not encouraged to be on the SEP because the EDQM will just not report these wordings on the SEPs. So I will have to go very quickly through this example because the time is running out. And if you're submitting a request to change to SEP 2.0 within a notification, this will be rejected because this is minor by default. However, if the dossier is updated in line with SEP 2.0 requirements, and you submit a minor change, minor revision, this is acceptable. You can also update the dossier in line with SEP 2.0, but you do not wish a SEP 2.0 certificate, this is also acceptable. For polymorphic forms, there are two options. If you have a mention of a polymorphic form in your dossier before, and now with SEP 2.0, you're wondering what to do, there are two options. Either you claim the form and provide a suitable package of information, either you remove this mention of polymorphic form and the test from specification completely. For micronization, well, the micronization can be added, of course, via request for revision, and there are certain also requirements to be met in section 2.1 manufacturing site for micronization, and relevant declarations should be given. Also section 4.1, 4.2, limits, ranges for particle size, density, whatever the tests are for the micronized grade, and a subtitle. Also, if there is a retest claimed, you will have to demonstrate that the substance is, that the micronization limits are for micronized grades are respected throughout the whole retest period. And micronization sites will be indicated separately on the certificate SEP 2.0, which is different compared to the previous practice. If you do not wish to claim a micronized grade of the substance, micronization should not be part of the SEP dossier. You can only mention it shortly in 2.2, but it should not be developed. So here is an example of how to organize the specification if you have several micronized grades. For example, you can have the specification in 2 pages. First page for one grade, second page for the second grade, where, for example, I took example of sieve test. It could be also some particle size distribution. So, for example, sieve test, so the limits are different. Or, on the other hand, you can have a single page specification where you have parameters which are applicable to all grades here, and then one set of parameters for one grade, one set of parameters for the other grade, and this is, I would say, a bit more elegant approach. Also, you can have specification parameters not necessary to satisfy European regional requirements. For example, if you wish to have heavy metal tests or something like that, you can mention it in the specification, but we will not append the corresponding procedure to the SEP. Please do note that if you do not wish to claim a polymorphic form, but you wish to leave the X-ray test for form 2, for example, as test not necessary to satisfy European regional requirements, this will not be accepted. For polymorphic forms, you should either claim the grade or remove the test. Okay, so I have plenty of information on this slide, but basically what this slide says is that analytical procedures from the pharmacopoeia monograph do not have to be reproduced in the dossier. Equivalent to the monograph have to be reproduced. Also, if there are referenced procedures from general chapters from the pharmacopoeia monograph which have been adapted, then this also has to be described in the dossier. Concerning the additional procedures, they have to be suitably validated. Of course, this is just a reminder. And of course, you should not only reference, this is, yes, here I give an example for analytical procedures from as I mentioned previously, adapted from general chapters. If you only reference the chapter, this is not enough. You really have to provide us the full description of the procedure. This is just a reminder how to organize section, well, at least the first page of the section 3 to S6. Of course, there can be some flexibility. For example, primary packaging, it can be like clear polyethylene bag, and then you put this black bag in secondary packaging, or you put it like this. In any case, we should know what is packed in what and where is, for example, this desiccant, and if there are alternative packagings, of course, these have to be described as well. Retest period is the last part of my presentation, and here I give some reminders about the introduction of a retest period. Concerning the data provided, minimum 6 months for long-term and accelerated, type of batches, either pilot scale or production scale, extrapolation. For extrapolation, there is decision tree in the EMA guideline. For stability, extrapolation is not always possible, so it should be evaluated by the company when this is possible, when not. It should be noted that it is possible to have several retest periods on the same set for different grades and container systems. And however, please note that EDQM policies about retest period may evolve in future, so please stay vigilant and check the guidelines regularly on our website. This is just a reminder where to provide information about retest period, and what information is necessary. A few tips. If the pharmacopoeia monograph for a specific substance has a test for appearance of solution, this should be included in the stability protocol. It should not be forgotten. If a polymorphic grade is claimed, as I said, the company should also demonstrate that the limits for micronized grade are maintained throughout the whole retest period as well. Pretty much the same is for micronized and sieved grade as for the polymorphic grade. And EDQM encourages the applicants to apply for a retest period, and there is certain flexibility in terms of data in the initial round, second round evaluation. So it is described here in the slide. There is an example that I will just have to quickly mention because we are running out of time. Here, obviously, we have 3 months, 3 months. So it is not acceptable because there should be 6 months at least submitted. In any case, just I would like to highlight here that you will have the presentation available afterwards. So you will be able to look at these slides in detail afterwards and check all these examples and analyze them, even though I am just now running through these few last slides. Of course, if there is substance packed under nitrogen, this has to be highlighted and also reflected within the retest, within the stability protocol. And now this is basically example how to use this decision tree. And again, voila, bad example. So please try to avoid it. And this is basically the last slide. Take-home messages for your submission of revision or renewal or a sister file. Please make sure that it is very important to classify changes in line with our guideline for revisions, because if the changes are not appropriately classified, EDQM might reject the request for revision. Please provide to EDQM a nicely organized, consolidated, comparative table which clearly describes the changes introduced in the process, because this is a key point to the evaluation of your requests. And also this request has to be supported with appropriate and developed justification according to our guideline for revisions and also according to the other guidelines such as EMA or ICH guidelines as applicable. If in doubt and if there is a question, because there will be question session immediately after this slide, if there will be a question that I did not have time to reply here during this webinar, please submit your question to EDQM help desk, or if you have a very specific question about your dossier or application, or if you're intending to submit a dossier, you're not sure how to proceed, you can request a technical advice meeting with EDQM assessors, or you can also request one-to-one meetings with EDQM assessors during conferences. So thank you for your attention. Sorry because I had a bit longer presentation than 1 hour, which was foreseen, but I hope you will in any case benefit from it. Okay, so now I will go to questions and try to answer some of your questions. So, for example, change to the process of the starting material with no impact on the starting material specification nor on the downstream intermediates and active substance. How should it be classified? Well, for me, this should be a minor change because quality of final substance is not impacted. Yes. Next question is, in case a SEP undergoes a major revision before the 5 years from the initial approval have passed, does the SEP holder still have to submit for renewal? Yes. If yes, should this be performed before the expiration of the 5 years from the initial approval? Yes. And it should be, the request should be submitted before approximately 6 months before the date of expiration of the SEP. Okay, next question is, when you apply for a sister SEP, it needs to be submitted according to current guidelines. True. Imagine that the parent SEP was approved many years ago and would not meet the current criteria of EDQM. Will the parent SEP be reviewed when a sister SEP dossier is submitted? Will the parent SEP be requested to meet the current EDQM criteria? Okay, so this is a very interesting question. It is true that a sister SEP should be in line with all current guidelines, which means that sister file SEP has to be in line with them. However, will the parent SEP be reviewed when a sister SEP dossier is submitted? No. So the EDQM assessor will consult the parent SEP application. However, a sister file application, in order to just compare it with the sister file application, but what the assessor evaluates is the sister file application. And the sister file application can, in this case, also serve sort of as to refresh this parent file, right? And then will the parent SEP be requested to meet the current EDQM criteria? We cannot request that from a sister file. So it is indeed only the sister file that we will be evaluating. The parent file stays as it is. Are there templates for contents of the cover letter for either a new SEP application or a SEP revision application available in EDQM website? I think that for the cover letter there is no a template, but we can check the website. I will check it after this question as well. However, if there is not a template, there should of course be the SEP holder details, the reference of the SEP number you're referring to. You should tell what revision you're applying for. You can also give you can also actually in cover letter, the second part of the letter, develop the changes, the justification of the changes that you're submitting. In the cover letter, you should also state if you wish a switch to SEP 2.0 certificate or not. You should mention some specific requests or details to your application in general. Next question. For a change that is classified as annual notification, for example, minor change in the manufacturing process, the active substance deriving from the change may be released to customers before EDQM review the application. What the SEP holder is expected to do if EDQM during review of the application asks for a different classification? For example, minor change instead of annual notification. Well, this is very interesting question. In this case, the SEP holder should explain this to their customers. This is the only answer I can give. And then the SEP holder should submit the new request for revision according to the appropriately classified change. Next question. Is a change to the synthetic process of a regulatory starting material listed in the EDQM guidelines, if there is no change to the starting material manufacturer specifications test procedure, is this a change that is required to be notified to EDQM? If not in the guidelines? Yes, definitely. Change in the route of synthesis of regulatory starting material has to you have to notify EDQM about this, even though the specification is the same, even though if submitting an ECTD baseline with minor changes for an approved SEP, is it expected to submit as per SEP 2.0? No. So you should submit it. Well, this is interesting question as well. You should submit it according to SEP 2.0 only if you wish SEP 2.0. However, when submitting an ECTD baseline, the SEP holder has to be very careful to submit the last approved version of a dossier as a baseline and should not introduce in the baseline the changes compared to the last approved version of a dossier, which means that you would have to submit two sequences. First sequence, which is the ECTD baseline, and then if you wish to submit another changes, this will have to be next sequence. And then if you wish SEP 2.0, you just state it in the cover letter, and that's it. Next question. In case of a major revision without changes to the content of the SEP itself, is a new version of the SEP released or is it validity confirmed? So earlier, it is true that for every major change, the SEP was revised, even though the content of the SEP was not affected. However, now, in case of a major revision, without changes to the content of the SEP, you will get a SEP remains valid letter stating this if you have hybrid or SEP 2.0. And you will also have it in case of the old SEP. Yes. So this is changed to our previous practice concerning major revisions. Next question. After renewal, the SEP holder get a new documents code. So this question probably means that does the SEP number change after the renewal? Yes, if the renewal procedure leads to revision of the SEP, then the SEP is revised, and the revised SEP has the new number, which is like the last digit of the SEP number is increased for 1. However, if the renewal if there are no changes affecting the SEP content after the renewal procedure, then the applicant will get a letter stating that the SEP remains valid, and in this case, the SEP number is not changed. The last digit of the SEP number is not changed. Next question. A manufacturer produces an API that involves 3 manufacturing steps. The first intermediate stage is isolated as salt, for example, acetate salt. The manufacturer introduces an optimization of the first stage process that involves the change of the salt, for example, from acetate to to chloride. The new process replaces the previous one. Should this change be submitted as major revision or as sister file? Well, if you are thinking whether to submit this as major revision or a sister file, this would be a major revision because you are changing basically the intermediate, slightly changing the structure of an intermediate, and you are replacing the process. So this is a major change. Next question. In case of sister file request, is the parent file also evaluated by EDQM? I have already answered to this, so no. Can it happen that questions are then asked about the parent file? In general, no. I mean, the questions are asked about parent file only if you wish to revise the parent file and you submit the request for revision of the parent file, and then there is need to ask questions. Otherwise, there is no need to ask anything about the parent file. Okay, next question regarding the reworking process. Okay, I can straight away say that reworking is not allowed, but I will read the question until the end. Regarding the reworking process, if it is rarely performed as corrective action in extreme cases, do we need to add this detail of reworking in the description section 32S22, or can we manage it according to our quality system as needed without including the reworking process in the dossier? Okay, I suppose that in this question, you're referring not to reworking, you're referring to reprocessing. I repeat, reworking is not allowed, reprocessing is allowed, and in any case, if you are performing reprocessing, even it is rarely performed, you have to inform EDQM about this via a suitable request for revision. Next question. If a SEP holder applies for a switch to SEP 2.0, must any fee be paid? Thank you. This is the last part of the. Okay, so switch to SEP 2.0 is a minor change by default and has to be submitted as a minor revision. Therefore, the fees have to be paid. Yes. However, please note that switch to SEP 2.0 is not obligatory. So it's your choice if you want to request your certificate to be in SEP 2.0 format or not. Okay, next question. If any minor revision after inform to EDQM, we need to approval, or we may implement after notify. Okay, I see. Okay, when we say do and tell and do what is on my slides, right? So if any minor revision, you performed some studies, you decided to submit a minor revision, but you did not liberate the batches, you did not sell the batches. You informed EDQM. EDQM approved this minor revision, and then you can proceed with implementation of the change, with production of batches, with release of the batches, with selling the batches to your customers. I hope I replied to this question satisfactorily. Which is the case not only for minor revision, but for any minor, major sister file as well. Next question, why should MDD be added as information related to the SEP? This is not always relevant or fully known for the IPI manufacturer. Well, indeed, MDD should be added in the SEP application. For me, it is obvious. Why? Because TTC is calculated based on MDD. So also other limits, for example, elemental impurities can be calculated based on MDD as well, or some others, but particularly for potentially mutagenic impurities and calculation of TTC, knowing the correct MDD is very important. So it has to be submitted within the, and of course TTC will then determine the control strategy for mutagenic impurities. So you have to know MDD if you are a SEP holder. There is no such, not always relevant or not fully known. It has to be known by the SEP holder. Next question. Taking into account the planned updated variation guideline in EU, will the EDQM plan to update the guideline for SEP revision when applicable for some change on the API? Yes. When EU guideline for variation is updated, EDQM will afterwards also update the guideline for revisions. Next question. If an update of the nitrosamines risk assessment is submitted, updating AI limits, okay, acceptable intake limits, according to updated guidelines, should it be submitted as minor change? Yes, yes, definitely. This is a clear minor change, change of nitrosamines in line with the nitrosamines control strategy, in line with the updated guideline. This is a minor change. Next question. If there is no impact on the SEP certificate and filed a minor revision with the SEP certificate, revised to hybrid SEP. Let me just read this again. If there is no impact on the SEP, no. So if there is no impact on the SEP content, you will get a letter stating that SEP remains valid, no matter of what is your current format of the certificate. Okay. Let me see if there are other questions that I can answer. If we perform a reprocessing procedure only on one batch, do we need to inform EDQM? Yes. If we are applying for new SEP, do we need to submit it in line with SEP 2.0? Okay, this is for new applications. We had presentation about new dossiers this morning, but I can say yes, all new dossiers are submitted within in line with requirements to SEP 2.0, and also the same cases for sister files. Next question. Do we understand correctly that in case of revision of an already approved SEP, after the approval, it will automatically be converted into SEP 2.0 from old version of SEP, from old version of the SEP, if it is the old version of the SEP, and the SEP is revised after the approval. No, well, it will be revised. The old SEP can be revised to hybrid SEP and to SEP 2.0 as well. If you request if you request, if we are speaking about a revision, okay, you have an old SAP and the SAP has to be revised, it will automatically be revised into hybrid SAP if you do not request a change to SAP 2.0. If you are requesting the switch to SAP 2.0, then we will transform old SAP to SAP 2.0. Next question, is there a fee for submitting ECTD baselines for an approved, for example, baseline with no changes for an approved SAP if not requesting SAP 2.0? I don't see how you would submit baseline without submitting the changes. Normally, baseline is submitted when a change is submitted within a suitable request for revision. Next question, in future, can we accept any changes to SAP 2.0 certification process? Haha, okay, this is probably, yes, the reaction to a joke that I made during the presentation. I should be very careful with jokes. This means that I said that SAP 2.0 requirements are now the newest ones until some other requirements come up. Well, the regulatory environment is changing. EDQM is trying to keep up to date, of course, with all the requirements, but also with the needs of all customers and stakeholders. So if there is a need identified for any further changes in future, the changes might take place. But for now, for the time being, SAP 2.0 remains the most user-friendly and the most modern version of the EDQM certificate. And with this, I think I will close this presentation because it's been exactly 1 hour 30 minutes. So thank you for your attention again. Thank you for your interest in participating in this webinar. If you have any unanswered questions, as I have already mentioned, please you can ask them to the EDQM help desk. I unfortunately did not have time to now answer all of your questions, but if you address to the help desk, we will answer it. Also, you will receive an email in the next 2-3 days with the links to this presentation that I have presented now, and also to the recording. So please feel free to use the examples that I have given in this presentation for preparation of your SAP revisions applications. I really hope that these examples will be useful to you. And also, we would appreciate if you could give us short feedback. When you're now exiting the webinar, there will be a window, pop-up window showing this feedback. And please, we appreciate this feedback, which would help us also to think how to organize presentations for next webinars and how to bring more useful information to you about SAP revisions. Thank you very much again, and I wish you a wonderful day.